The galactic city of Nixus Prime was a marvel of engineering and ambition, a sprawling metropolis suspended in orbit around the red dwarf star Zephyr. Its towering spires of chrome and glass glistened with the light of countless advertisements and holographic billboards. Beings of every conceivable shape and size bustled through its crowded streets, their lives intertwined in a chaotic dance of commerce, culture, and survival. For Solara, the city was both a promise and a curse. She had come to Nixus Prime in search of a better life for her and her daughter, Mira, leaving behind the ruins of their home planet, the Los. Once a lush and prosperous world, the Los had been ravaged by decades of interstellar war. Its people were scattered across the galaxy, many reduced to refugees, scorned and mistrusted for their supposed role in the conflicts. Solara had heard stories of Nixus Prime, its wealth, its opportunities, and its openness to outsiders. But those promises turned out to be illusions. As soon as she arrived, she was met with distrust and disdain. Thelosians were considered troublemakers, a people marked by a reputation they could not escape. "Move along, Thelosian," a gruff voice barked at her one day as she sought shelter near a market. The speaker, a hulking Crotherian merchant, waved a gnarled hand to shoo her away. "You're scaring off customers." Solara clutched Myra's hand tightly and moved on, swallowing the humiliation. Mira, barely 5 years old, looked up at her mother with wide, glowing eyes. Her innocence was a painful reminder of everything Solara was trying to protect. "Why do they hate us, Mama?" Mira asked, her small voice almost lost in the din of the marketplace. Solara knelt down, brushing a stray strand of silver hair from Myra's face. "They don't understand us, my star. People fear what they don't know." Mira nodded solemnly, but Solara could see the confusion and hurt in her daughter's expression. It tore at her heart. Days turned into weeks, and their situation grew increasingly dire. Solara had tried to find work, but no one wanted to hire a Thelosian. Her applications were ignored, her pleas dismissed. Even the communal shelters turned her away, their spaces reserved for priority cases, a term that clearly did not include her and Mira. The nights were the worst. The temperature on the lower levels of Nixus Prime plummeted, and the air vents spewed cold drafts that cut through their thin clothing. Solara wrapped Mira in her own tattered coat as they huddled under the broken wing of an abandoned shuttle in an alley. The faint hum of the city's power grid above was a cruel reminder of the warmth and comfort that seemed forever out of reach. Solara stared at the stars visible through the gaps in the towering skyline. Her body ached from hunger and exhaustion, but she refused to give in to despair. For Myra's sake, she had to stay strong. "I'll find a way," she whispered to herself, the words more a prayer than a promise. One night, as they sat sharing the last of a small loaf of nutrient bread Solara had managed to barter for, a group of street thugs approached. Their faces were hidden by holographic masks, their laughter echoing down the alley like a predator's growl. "Well, what do we have here?" one of them sneered, the glow of his mask casting an eerie light over his sharp features. "A little Thelosian family, all alone in the big, bad city." Solara instinctively pulled Mira close, her protective instincts flaring. "We don't want trouble," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. "Trouble?" another thug laughed. "No trouble at all, lady. Just hand over whatever you've got, and we'll be on our way." "I have nothing," Solara replied, her voice steady now. "Please, just leave us be." The thugs advanced, and Solara prepared to fight, even knowing it was hopeless. But before they could reach her, a bright beam of light cut through the darkness, followed by a commanding voice. "Leave them alone." The thugs froze, squinting against the light. A human figure stepped forward, holding a high-powered flashlight in one hand and a stun baton in the other. His face was rugged and weathered, his clothes marked with the grime of someone who worked hard for a living. He stood tall, exuding confidence and determination. "This isn't your business, human," one of the thugs snarled. "Make it mine," the man shot back, his voice calm but laced with an undeniable edge of authority. After a tense moment, the thugs muttered curses under their breath and retreated into the shadows. The human lowered his flashlight and turned to Solara and Mira. His expression softened as he took in their frightened faces. "Are you two okay?" he asked, his voice gentle now. Solara nodded hesitantly, still clutching Mira protectively. "We're fine. Thank you." "My name's Jack," he said, offering a hand. "I couldn't just stand by and watch." Solara hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was firm but reassuring. For the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, someone in this galaxy still cared. Jack's apartment wasn't luxurious by Nexus Prime standards. It was a cramped but functional space tucked into the mid-levels of the city, where the hum of power lines was quieter and the air wasn't as biting. The walls were lined with shelves cluttered with gadgets, tools, and small trinkets from his interstellar travels. A single window offered a view of the bustling space lanes, where ships zipped between the spires like fireflies. "It's not much," Jack said, scratching the back of his neck, "but it's warm, and there's food." Solara and Mira stood hesitantly at the doorway. The smell of something savory wafted through the air, making Myra's stomach growl audibly. Solara's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but Jack just chuckled. "Come on in," he said, stepping aside. "Dinner's on the stove." Solara glanced down at Mira, who was clutching her hand tightly, her wide, glowing eyes filled with both awe and caution. Taking a deep breath, Solara stepped inside. As they ate, Jack learned more about Solara and Mira. Solara spoke hesitantly at first, unsure if this human's kindness came with hidden strings. But Jack's easygoing demeanor and warm smile encouraged her to share. "I was a botanist on the Los," Solara said, her voice soft. "Before the war, before everything fell apart. My people were farmers, scholars, healers. We weren't warriors, but the galaxy saw us as threats." Jack listened intently, nodding but not interrupting. "When the war ended, we became scapegoats. Other worlds blamed us for the destruction, for alliances we didn't even choose. The Los was left to rot, and those of us who fled." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "We became the galaxy's outcasts." Jack's brow furrowed. "That's not fair," he said, his voice firm. "You're just trying to survive, like anyone else." Solara's gaze dropped to her plate. "Survival doesn't seem to matter to most people here." Jack looked over at Mira, who was eagerly devouring her second helping of stew, blissfully unaware of the heavy conversation. "And her father?" he asked gently. Solara stiffened for a moment, then shook her head. "He left us before Mira was born. He didn't want the burden of a family when everything fell apart." Jack's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned to Mira, who had just finished her meal. "How about some dessert, kiddo?" he asked, grinning. Myra's eyes lit up. "Dessert," she repeated, the word unfamiliar to her. Jack chuckled and brought out a small container of frozen fruit sorbet. Myra's delight was contagious, and for the first time in a long while, Solara found herself smiling. Later that evening, Jack pulled out a blanket and a pillow, setting them on his worn-out couch. "You two can take the bed," he said. "I'll sleep here." "No, we couldn't," Solara protested, shaking her head. "You've already done too much dash." "Look," Jack interrupted, holding up a hand. "I've spent enough nights sleeping on that thing to know it's not a big deal. Besides, you and Mira need the rest more than I do." Solara hesitated but eventually nodded. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." As Jack settled on the couch, he glanced at the pair as they disappeared into the bedroom. Mira was already chattering excitedly about the dessert, her glowing eyes reflecting the light of the room like tiny stars. Jack couldn't help but smile. The next morning, Solara woke to the smell of coffee and something frying. She found Jack in the kitchen, flipping what looked like synthetic protein patties in a pan. Good morning, he said cheerfully. Breakfast is almost ready. Solara felt a pang of guilt. Jack, we can't keep taking advantage of your kindness. You've already done so much. Jack waved her off. Don't worry about it. I've got a job lined up today, freighter maintenance over at Dock 7. They pay well enough for me to help out for a bit. Solara hesitated, then spoke cautiously. I want to work. I can't just sit here while you support us. Jack raised an eyebrow. What can you do? I'm a botanist, Solara said. I worked with ecosystems, agricultural development. If there's anywhere in the city that needs someone with those skills, Jack's face lit up. You know, there's a hydroponic garden a few levels up. It's run by an old friend of mine, Kale. He's always complaining about not having enough help. I could introduce you. Solara's hope flickered to life. You do that? Of course, Jack said. It's about time someone gave you a break. That afternoon, Jack took Solara and Mira to the hydroponic garden. It was a lush, green sanctuary nestled among the metal and neon of Nexus Prime. Rows of vibrant plants grew under carefully calibrated lights, their leaves shimmering with dew. Kale, a wiry Corvian with an exoskeleton that clicked softly as he moved, eyed Solara skeptically at first. But as she spoke, detailing her knowledge of plant systems and her experience back on the Los, his attitude shifted. Fine, Kale said gruffly, though his mandibles twitched in what Jack knew was a smile. I'll give you a trial run. Show me what you can do. Solara's relief was palpable. She shook Kale's hand, her gratitude shining in her eyes. Thank you. I won't let you down. As they left the garden, Jack glanced at Solara. See? Things are starting to turn around. Solara smiled faintly. Thanks to you. Jack shrugged, but the warmth in his expression betrayed his modesty. Sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you. For the first time since arriving in Nexus Prime, Solara dared to believe he might be right. Solara's trial at the hydroponic garden proved to be a turning point. Within days, Kale realized she was more than capable, she was brilliant. Her intricate understanding of soil chemistry and plant genetics, honed during her years on the Los, brought new life to the struggling crops. She restructured the nutrient flow systems, introduced techniques to maximize growth efficiency, and even managed to revive a nearly extinct plant species vital to the ecosystem. Kale, though gruff by nature, couldn't help but be impressed. You're hired, he announced one afternoon, his mandibles twitching as he extended his claw-like hand. Full-time. And if anyone gives you grief about being Thelosian, send them to me. Solara's heart swelled with gratitude. Thank you, Kale. I won't let you down. As Solara thrived in her new role, Mira began attending a local school tailored to children from diverse species. Though nervous at first, Myra's natural curiosity and the soft glow of her Thelosian skin quickly made her popular among her peers. She excelled in her studies, and her classmates were fascinated by the stories she told about the Los, a planet many had only heard of in history books. Mama! Mira exclaimed one evening, her luminescent eyes bright with excitement as Solara prepared dinner in their small apartment. Today, we learned about the binary star system of Zenther. And I told everyone how Grandpa used to map star charts on the Los. My teacher said I should bring some to class. Solara smiled warmly. Grandpa would be so proud of you, my little star. We'll find some charts tonight. Mira beamed, her glow intensifying with joy. Jack remained a constant presence in their lives, though he was careful not to intrude. He still flew his freighter routes, often bringing back small trinkets or treats from far-off worlds for Mira. On his days off, he helped Solara with repairs around the apartment or accompanied her to the market, always ready to carry the heavier loads. You don't have to keep helping us, you know, Solara said one day as they walked back from the market, Mira skipping ahead of them. Jack smirked. I know. But I want to. You've got enough on your plate without worrying about groceries. Solara gave him a sidelong glance, her expression softening. You're a good man, Jack. Not many would do what you've done for us. He shrugged. It's just the right thing to do. Besides, he added with a grin, you make the best tea in Nexus Prime. That's payment enough. Solara laughed, a sound Jack realized he wanted to hear more often. One evening, after Mira had gone to bed, Jack stayed a little longer than usual. He and Solara sat on the apartment's small balcony, gazing at the endless stream of ships crisscrossing the city's skyline. The hum of Nexus Prime seemed distant, almost peaceful in the quiet of the night. You've come a long way since that night in the alley, Jack said, breaking the silence. Solara nodded. I never thought we'd find this stability. It still feels fragile, like it could disappear at any moment. Jack turned to her, his expression serious. It's not fragile. You've built this life with your own strength and resilience. You should be proud. Solara met his gaze, her silver hair catching the faint glow of the city lights. I am. But it's not just my strength. I wouldn't be here without you. Jack looked away, his cheeks tinged red. I didn't do much, he muttered. You did everything, Solara said, her voice firm. You gave us hope when we had none. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Then Jack cleared his throat. So, do you ever think about the future? I mean, where you'd like to be, years from now? Solara smiled wistfully. I want Mira to grow up in a world where she's not judged for being Thelosian. A world where she can be proud of who she is. As for me... She hesitated, her gaze flicking to Jack. I just want to feel safe. Loved. Jack's heart raced. He opened his mouth to speak but hesitated, unsure of how to articulate the storm of emotions swirling inside him. Before he could decide, Mira appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Mama, can I have some water? She asked. Solara rose immediately. Of course, my star. She glanced back at Jack with a small, apologetic smile before disappearing inside. Jack leaned back in his chair, staring up at the stars. For the first time in a long while, he found himself thinking about settling down not just anywhere, but here, with Solara and Mira. The next day, Jack took Mira to the park while Solara was at work. As they watched a group of alien children playing together, Mira turned to Jack with a curious look. Jack, do you like Mama? She asked innocently. Jack nearly choked on his coffee. What do you mean, kiddo? Mira giggled. You're always around, and you make Mama smile. She doesn't smile for anyone else like that. Jack scratched the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. Well, your Mama's pretty amazing, he said finally. Anyone would be lucky to know her. Mira grinned, her glow intensifying. I think you should marry her. Jack laughed, though the thought lingered in his mind long after Mira ran off to play. That night, as Solara put Mira to bed, she noticed a new warmth in Jack's demeanor. He stayed late again, helping her fix a leaky faucet and chatting about the stars. Solara caught him staring at her more than once, his expression thoughtful. She didn't press him, but she couldn't deny the flutter in her chest. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream of a future where she and Mira were more than survivors. A future filled with love, stability, and the man who had become their anchor in an unforgiving galaxy. The wedding of Solara and Jack was not an extravagant affair by Nexus Prime standards, but it was perfect in its simplicity. Held in the hydroponic garden where Solara had found her first job in the city, the ceremony was surrounded by lush greenery and glowing flowers. The venue had been Kale's idea, and he had personally overseen the arrangements, ensuring the space was as vibrant as Solara's new life. Mira was the star of the event, her glowing skin radiating joy as she darted between guests, carrying small bouquets of bioluminescent flowers to everyone who attended. For the first time, the galaxy felt like it embraced her unique light rather than shunned it. Jack stood at the makeshift altar, nervous but beaming, dressed in a simple but clean suit. Solara walked toward him, her silver hair adorned with delicate Thelosian flower clips. Her dress, handmade by a fellow Thelosian in the community, shimmered faintly, a tribute to her homeland's twin moons. As she approached, her eyes locked on Jack's, filled with gratitude, love, and hope. The vows were heartfelt. Jack's voice trembled slightly as he began. Solara, when I first met you, I didn't know how much you and Mira would change my life. You've shown me strength, resilience, and love in ways I never thought possible. Today, I promise to stand by you, to protect you, and to be the family you and Mira deserve. Solara's voice, steady and clear, carried the weight of years of hardship and newfound hope. Jack, you saw us when no one else did. You gave us a chance when the galaxy turned its back. You are our light in the darkness, our home among the stars. I promise to walk with you, to share your burdens, and to love you for the rest of my days. The officiant, a jovial alien cleric with a warm, gravelly voice, declared them bonded. When Jack kissed Solara, the garden erupted in cheers, whistles, and applause from the diverse group of friends, colleagues, and even strangers who had gathered to witness their union. The reception was a colorful celebration of cultures. Dishes from a dozen worlds filled long tables, and music from all corners of the galaxy echoed through the garden. Kale, surprisingly nimble for his spindly frame, led a lively dance that got everyone laughing, including Mira, who insisted Jack join her. Solara watched from the edge of the garden, her heart full. Myra's laughter rang out as Jack spun her in the air, her glow illuminating their faces. For the first time in years, Solara felt truly at peace. You did good, Solara, Kale said, joining her with a glass of sparkling green Thelosian wine. His mandibles twitched in what she now recognized as a smile. And I don't say that often. She chuckled. Thank you, Kale. For everything. Don't thank me, he said, raising his glass. Thank the human of yours. He's the reason half these people are here tonight. Seems your Jack has a knack for bringing folks together. Solara's gaze lingered on Jack, who was now attempting a particularly awkward dance move with Mira. She smiled. He does, doesn't he? As the night wore on, guests began to leave, offering warm congratulations and heartfelt blessings. Jack, Solara, and Mira sat together under a canopy of glowing vines, savoring the quiet after the festivities. Mira climbed onto Jack's lap, her head resting against his chest. I'm so happy, Jack, she murmured sleepily. Does this mean you're my papa now? Jack's throat tightened. He looked at Solara, who nodded encouragingly. If you'll have me, he said softly. Myra's eyes glowed brighter as she grinned. You're the best papa in the galaxy. Jack kissed her forehead, his heart full. And you're the best daughter a guy could ask for. The days following the wedding were a whirlwind of new beginnings. Solara's reputation as a botanist continued to grow, and she was soon invited to lead a project restoring green spaces across Nexus Prime. Mira thrived in school, her confidence soaring as the community embraced her unique light. Jack, ever the adventurer, found a new purpose in helping the city's outcasts, inspired by Solara's strength and resilience. Their story spread across Nexus Prime, a beacon of hope in a galaxy often divided by prejudice and fear. People began to see Thelosians in a new light, their contributions and struggles recognized for the first time in years. Solara became an advocate for displaced communities, her voice a rallying cry for unity and understanding. One evening, as the family sat on their balcony, watching the endless stream of ships against the starry expanse, Mira asked, Mama, do you think other families will be like us one day? Humans and Thelosians and everyone else, together? Solara wrapped an arm around her daughter, her other hand entwined with Jack's. I believe they will, my star. Love has a way of bringing people together, no matter how different they seem. Jack squeezed Solara's hand. "And if the galaxy needs a reminder, we'll be here to show them." As the stars shimmered above, the family sat in quiet contentment, their love a small but powerful light in the vastness of the cosmos. Together, they faced a future filled with hope, acceptance, and boundless possibilities.